The rain fell differently in Seoul. Zuri Adebayo stood at the window of the guest house, watching water slide down the curved tiles of the Hanok roof. In Lagos, rain announced itself with thunder and fury. Here it whispered, persistent, patient, cold. She pulled her cardigan tighter and returned to the open suitcase on the floor. Everything she owned fit into 2 bags. 24 years of life, condensed. This is temporary, she reminded herself. 1 year, then home. Except home didn't exist anymore. The memory arrived unbidden. Her mother's laugh, her father's steady hands. The car that took them both on a rain-slicked road outside Ikeja. The scholarship letter that arrived 3 days after the funeral, like mercy wrapped in cruelty. Zuri shook her head, forcing the ghosts back. She'd learned survival early, through borrowed textbooks, sleeping in libraries, smiling through hunger. Korea was just another borrowed space. Another place where she didn't quite belong, but would make herself useful enough to stay. Her fingers found the acceptance letter from Yonsei University, edges soft from handling. Graduate school. A future built on other people's pity and her own stubborn pride. The guest room smelled of cedarwood and something floral she couldn't name. Traditional ondol heating warmed the floor beneath her feet. Outside, Seoul glittered through the rain, neon and glass towers rising beyond the traditional neighborhood of Bukchon. Old and new, side by side, never quite touching, like her. She began unpacking. Textbooks first, then clothes. Her fingers trembled slightly. Exhaustion, probably, or the weight of starting over in a country where even the alphabet looked like art she couldn't read. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Aryum had warned her it would be. Her father kept strange hours, preferred solitude. He's not unfriendly, Aryum had said. Just careful. You'll see. Zuri hadn't seen him yet, hadn't heard him. The main house sat separate from the guest house, connected by a covered walkway and a garden she'd glimpsed only in darkness. She peeled off her damp sweater, suddenly overheated despite the autumn chill. The lock on the door was old-fashioned, the kind that required deliberate clicking into place. She'd meant to check it earlier. Her shirt came off next. Sports bra, jeans, hair falling loose from its bun, just herself and the rain and the borrowed room, and... The door opened. Time fractured. A man's silhouette filled the doorway. Tall, still, backlit by the hallway's soft light. Zuri's hands flew to cover herself, but her body had frozen, betraying her. He froze too, their eyes met. She should scream, move, something. But the moment stretched like taffy, sticky and impossible. His face came into focus, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes widening in horror, silver threading through black hair, older. Handsome in that devastating, weathered way. Aram's father. 1 second. 2, 3. Then he stepped back, hand still on the door handle, and spoke in a voice like gravel smoothed by water. I'm sorry. The lock, I didn't know. The door closed. Zuri's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, heart hammering, skin burning where his gaze had touched. What happens when a single glance changes everything? Stay with me. Because what comes next will break your heart before it heals it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you believe some lines should never be crossed. 3 weeks earlier, Zuri had stood in the courtyard of Yonsei University with her orientation packet clutched in both hands, trying to look less terrified than she felt. The campus sprawled before her, Gothic buildings with traditional Korean roofs, students moving in laughing clusters, speaking rapid Korean she could barely follow despite 3 months of desperate Duolingo practice. Everyone seemed to know where they belonged. Everyone except her. You look lost, Zuri turned. A girl stood beside her, petite, hair dyed honey blonde, wearing a Chanel jacket over ripped jeans. Her smile was enormous and completely without guile. I am lost, Zuri admitted. Very lost. Perfect, I love lost people. They're more interesting. The girl looped her arm through Zuri's like they'd known each other for years. I'm Han Aryum. International business. But honestly, I'm just here because my dad insisted I get a degree before joining his company. You? Zuri Adebayo. Development economics. Scholarship student from Nigeria. Nigeria, I love your accent. Say something else. Despite herself, Zuri laughed. Like what? Anything. Your name again. It's beautiful. Zuri, it means beautiful in Swahili. See, you're already the most interesting person I've met today. Aram squeezed her arm. We're going to be best friends. I decided just now. And somehow, impossibly, they were. Aram was everything Zuri wasn't. Loud, where Zuri was careful. Generous, where Zuri had learned to hoard. Naive about privilege in ways that should have been irritating, but somehow felt innocent. She dragged Zuri to cafes Zuri couldn't afford, then casually paid for everything. She introduced her to other international students, smoothed over cultural confusions, made Korea feel slightly less foreign. Where are you staying? Aram asked one afternoon, 3 weeks into friendship, over bubble tea. Zuri hadn't ordered, but Aram had bought anyway. Student housing. It's fine. It's terrible. Those rooms are like shoeboxes. Aram leaned forward, eyes bright. Move into my family's guest house. Seriously, we have this whole separate building that just sits empty. My dad won't care. He barely notices anything except his work. You'd save money, have actual space, and I'd have you close by. Arum, I can't just. Yes, you can. You're doing me a favor, honestly. That house is too quiet. My dad's too quiet. You'd be adding life to the place. Zuri hesitated. Pride warred with practicality. The student housing was terrible. Thin walls, shared bathrooms, the constant noise of dozens of students packed too close. And money. Money was always the calculation underneath everything. There's rules, though, Aryum added with mock seriousness. No wild parties, no smoking inside, and just don't fall for my dad or anything. He's intense. Zuri laughed. I don't think that'll be a problem. Good, because he's been alone forever and I'd like to keep it that way. My mom died when I was 3, childbirth complications. He raised me by himself, which sounds romantic, but mostly meant he was terrifying and overprotective and forgot to smile for like a decade. Something in Aryum's voice softened. He's better now. Mostly. He runs some consulting firm, very boring corporate stuff. But he used to be different. Before I was born, he was involved in things he won't talk about. I've pieced together enough to know it wasn't legal and definitely wasn't safe. And he just stopped? When my mom got pregnant with me, went completely legitimate overnight. Like he decided to become a different person. Aryum shrugged. Now he's just this quiet, serious guy who works too much and worries too much and barely dates because he's terrified I'll think he's replacing my mom. Zuri absorbed this. A man who'd walked away from his entire life for his daughter. It painted a picture of discipline she couldn't quite imagine. You'll meet him, Aryum continued. He's polite, formal, speaks perfect English. He'll probably bow and call you Miss Adebayo and then disappear into his study. Don't take it personally. He's like that with everyone. 2 days later, Zuri moved into the guest house in Bukchon. The traditional Hanok sat in a neighborhood of curved tile roofs and narrow alleys, tourists wandering through like it was a museum. But inside the walls, the Han family compound was private. A main house, the separate guest house, a garden with a stone path. Aram helped her unpack, chattering constantly. Dad's on a business trip until next week. You'll have time to settle in before meeting him. Trust me, it's better this way, less awkward. That night, alone in the guest house, Zuri felt the weight of displacement settle over her like a blanket. She was grateful, terrified, guilty for accepting charity, determined to prove she deserved it. She looked around the room. Traditional architecture, modern amenities, space that felt impossibly luxurious after the cramped housing she'd known. This was temporary. Everything was temporary. She would study, excel, leave. She would not make mistakes. She would not get attached. She would definitely, absolutely not fall for her best friend's father. That would be unthinkable. The door closed. Zuri remained on the floor, arms wrapped around herself, listening to footsteps retreat down the hallway. Quick, purposeful, escaping. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She grabbed her shirt from the floor and pulled it on with shaking hands. The fabric felt wrong against her skin, too rough, too present, a reminder that she had a body and that body had just been seen. He saw me. Not just her physical form, though that was mortifying enough. Something else had passed between them in that suspended moment. Recognition, not of bodies, but of something deeper, lonelier. She pressed her palms against her eyes. This was nothing. An accident, a broken lock, and terrible timing. Tomorrow they would both pretend it never happened. Tomorrow. Morning arrived with cruel brightness. Zuri had barely slept. She'd rehearsed a dozen speeches, apologies, jokes, casual dismissals. None of them felt right. By the time she heard movement in the main house, her stomach was twisted into knots. She almost stayed in the guest house, skipped breakfast entirely. But Aram had texted, Dad's back. Come meet him properly. Breakfast at 8. Running would look worse than facing it. Zuri dressed carefully, jeans, a loose sweater that covered everything, hair pulled back severely, armor. She walked the stone path to the main house with her heart hammering against her ribs. The dining room was traditional. Low table, cushions on heated floors, morning light streaming through paper screens. Arim was already there, setting out dishes, chattering about her morning class. And him. Han Jae-won sat at the head of the table, perfectly still. He wore a simple gray sweater and dark slacks. His hair was damp from a recent shower. He looked exactly as he had last night. Sharp features, quiet intensity, except now she could see him in daylight. The silver at his temples, the careful control in how he held himself. He didn't look up when she entered. Zuri, Aryam beamed. Finally, Dad. This is Zuri Adebayo, the friend I told you about. Zuri, my father, Han Jae-won. Zuri bowed, the Korean greeting she'd practiced. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Han. Thank you for your hospitality. His eyes lifted then, met hers for precisely 1 second. Miss Adebayo. His voice was steady, formal. Welcome to our home. I hope the guest house is comfortable. Very comfortable. Thank you. They were strangers, polite strangers making polite conversation. Nothing had happened, except his jaw was too tight, and her hands were trembling as she knelt at the table. Arum filled the silence effortlessly, talking about her classes, a party next weekend, some drama with a classmate. Zuri nodded in the right places, trying to eat rice that tasted like sand. Across the table, Jae-won was equally mechanical, lifting his chopsticks, setting them down, lifting them again. Dad, you're being weird, Aryam observed. Are you okay? I'm fine. He reached for his teacup. His hand shook, barely just a tremor, as he lifted it. Tea sloshed against the rim. He set it down quickly, stood. Excuse me, I have calls to make. He left without looking back. Aram stared after him. That was strange. He's usually more talkative than that. Talkative? The man had spoken maybe 20 words. Maybe he's tired, Zuri offered weakly. Maybe. Aram shrugged and returned to her food. Anyway, isn't this great? The three of us under one roof. It'll be like having a real family again. Zuri forced a smile. Yeah, great. That afternoon, alone in the guest house, Zuri finally let herself think about it. The moment in the doorway, she'd been seen before. By boyfriends, brief and forgettable. By doctors, by herself in mirrors. Being seen was normal, biological, meaningless. But last night had felt different. I felt seen, completely, terrifyingly seen. Not objectified, not judged, just witnessed. As if in that frozen second, he'd looked past skin and shame and seen the lonely, displaced girl underneath. And she'd seen him too. The shock in his eyes, yes, but also something raw, vulnerable. A man who'd forgotten how to want anything and had just been reminded. Stop, she whispered to herself. Stop it right now. This was Aryam's father. A man 20-something years older than her host, her benefactor, someone she owed respect and gratitude and absolutely nothing else. She would avoid him. Simple. Jae-won made the same decision. In his study, he sat at his desk and stared at paperwork he couldn't read. His mind kept circling back, the moment of opening the door, expecting emptiness, finding her instead. He'd seen women before, been married, buried a wife, dated occasionally, briefly, always ending things when Aryam grew attached or uncomfortable. But this girl, young, beautiful, yes, but that wasn't it. It was the way she'd frozen. Not with fear, but with the same shock he'd felt. The recognition that something irreversible had just occurred. Guilt crashed over him. Self-disgust, hot and familiar. She was his daughter's friend, a guest, a student. 24 years old while he carried 49 years and lifetimes of mistakes. He thought of his past. The violence, the blood. The man he'd been before Aryam. He'd built discipline from chaos. Control from hunger. He could not let himself become that hungry man again. He would keep his distance. He would be a good father. He would not think about her. But the house wasn't big enough for two people fighting the same silent battle. Days passed. They moved like ghosts around each other. Jae-won leaving for work before breakfast, returning after dinner. Zuri timing her movements to avoid the main house. When they did cross paths, they perfected the art of not seeing. Eyes sliding past, murmured greetings without stopping. Aryam noticed nothing. She was too busy with school, friends, her own bright life. Only the garden witnessed the truth. Jae-won walking its paths at midnight, restless. Zuri watching from her window, unable to sleep. The rain kept falling. The distance kept shrinking. And neither of them knew how to stop what had already started. The avoidance became routine. Zuri memorized his schedule like scripture. Coffee at 5:47 a.m., she heard the kettle whistle from the guest house. Out the door by 6:30. Home between 7 and 8 p.m. depending on traffic. She planned her life around his absences. But small things kept appearing. One morning, she found fresh chrysanthemums outside her door. White and yellow, arranged simply in a ceramic vase. Traditional, the kind of gesture any host might make. Except they appeared again 3 days later. Different flowers, pale pink cosmos this time. Did you put these here? She asked Aryam over lunch. Flowers? No, must be Dad. He does that sometimes, thinks he's being hospitable. It's kind of old-fashioned. Hospitality, that's all it was. Zuri brought the flowers inside anyway, put them by her window where morning light caught the petals. 2 weeks later, Zuri checked her university account and froze. Her tuition balance, the amount she'd been planning to pay in installments over the semester, carefully budgeted from her scholarship and part-time work, was zero. Paid in full, the screen read. Her hands went cold. She checked again, refreshed the page. Same result. She knew before she confirmed it. Knew with bone-deep certainty who had done this. She marched to the main house, fury and something else burning in her chest. Aryam was at a study group. The house was silent except for soft classical music coming from down the hall. His study door was open. Jaewon sat at his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, absorbed in a document. The afternoon light caught the silver in his hair. He looked tired, distinguished, completely unaware of her presence. Zuri knocked on the doorframe. He looked up. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, then careful neutrality. Miss Adebayo. He removed his glasses. Is something wrong? Why would you do this? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm not sure I understand. My tuition. You paid my tuition. Not a question. He was quiet for a long moment. Then it seemed necessary. Necessary? She stepped into the study. I didn't ask for this. I don't need charity. It isn't charity. Then what is it? He stood slowly, moving around the desk, but maintaining distance. You're working 2 part-time jobs while carrying a full course load. You're exhausted. Your advisor mentioned you'd been struggling. You spoke to my advisor? She's a family friend. She mentioned in passing that a brilliant student was stretched too thin. He paused. I simply provided an option. Without asking me? Would you have accepted if I'd asked? No, obviously not, and he knew it. Zuri's anger wavered, replaced by something more dangerous. Gratitude. The awful, crushing weight of being cared for by someone who shouldn't care. Why? She asked quietly. Why would you do this for me? Jaewon looked at her then, really looked for the first time since the door incident. His expression was unguarded for half a second. Because you remind me that goodness still exists. The words hung between them. Zuri's breath caught. Mr. Han, I'll arrange for the funds to be returned if that's your preference. His voice went formal again, walls slamming back into place. I meant no offense. She should say yes. Should insist on repayment, on independence, on maintaining proper boundaries. No, she heard herself say, I'll accept it, as a loan. I'll pay you back. That isn't necessary. It is to me. He nodded once. As you wish. They stood in the study, late afternoon light painting everything gold, neither moving. The classical music continued its gentle progression. Somewhere a clock ticked. Thank you. Zuri finally said, You're welcome. She left before she could say anything else. That evening, Aryam called from her bedroom, voice bright with excitement. Hey, so I got offered this amazing internship in Busan. 2 weeks, all expenses paid, looks incredible for my resume. You'll be okay here, right? Dad's around if you need anything. Zuri's stomach dropped. 2 weeks? I know it's sudden, but this opportunity is perfect. You don't mind, do you? Yes. No. I don't know. Of course not, Zuri said. That's wonderful, Aram. You should go. You're the best. I leave Saturday. 3 days. The house changed when Aram left. Suddenly there was no buffer, no cheerful chatter to fill silences, just Zuri and Jaewon, orbiting each other in careful patterns. Zuri's academic performance, instead of improving with the paid tuition, got worse. She'd sit at her desk with textbooks open, reading the same paragraph 5 times without comprehension. Her thoughts kept drifting to the main house, to whether he was home, to the flowers that still appeared. Her advisor pulled her aside. Is everything all right? Your last paper was unusually unfocused. I'm fine, Zuri lied. Just adjusting, but she wasn't fine. The first night encounter happened accidentally. Zuri couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., she gave up and went to the main house kitchen for tea. The lights were off. She moved quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. Then she saw him. Jaewon stood by the window, looking out at the garden. He wore simple pajamas and a robe. His hair was disheveled. He looked smaller somehow, human. I didn't mean to intrude, Zuri said softly. He turned, wasn't surprised. You're not. I couldn't sleep either. The tea here is better than what I have. Help yourself. She moved to the kettle. He didn't leave. They stood in the darkness, the only sound the water beginning to boil. I haven't been sleeping well, he said finally, since before Ariam left. Neither have I. The admission felt dangerous. Zuri poured 2 cups, handed him one. Their fingers brushed, just barely, just enough. Both pulled back like burned. I lost my parents when I was 19, Zuri found herself saying. Car accident. I was at university. Got a phone call. She stared into her tea. I haven't slept properly since. Some part of me is always waiting for the next terrible thing. Jaewon was quiet. Then, my wife died giving birth to Aryam. Complications. The doctors said it was rare, unpredictable. His voice was rough. I held my daughter for the first time over my wife's body. Zuri looked up. His face was shadowed, but she could see the pain there. Old, deep, carefully contained. I spent Aryam's entire childhood terrified I'd lose her too, he continued. Every fever, every school trip, every time she was 5 minutes late, I've spent 24 years preparing for disaster. Is that why you left your old life? He nodded slowly. I was involved in things that would have made me a target, made her a target. So I became someone else, someone careful, controlled. He smiled without humor. The air between them shifted. They both reached for the teapot at the same moment. Hands collided, fingers tangled. This time, neither pulled away immediately. Zuri felt his pulse against her palm, quick, unsteady. Felt the warmth of his skin, saw his eyes drop to where they touched. Then he stepped back. I should go. Mr. Han, please, call me Jaewon. His voice was strained. Just once. Jaewon, she whispered. He closed his eyes like the sound hurt, then left without another word. Zuri stood alone in the kitchen, her hands still warm where his had been. She'd never wanted something she couldn't have this much. And she suspected, terrifyingly, that he felt exactly the same way Aryam returned on a Wednesday, 5 days early, bursting through the door with energy that felt like violence against the quiet Zuri and Jaewon had been living in. I'm back, and I have the most incredible news. Zuri was in the main house kitchen. She'd stopped pretending she didn't spend time there. Jaewon was making dinner, moving with the focused precision he brought to everything. They'd developed a rhythm, cooking together in careful silence, sitting across from each other with books neither really read, existing in the same space without touching. It was torture. It was the best part of Zuri's day. You're early, Zuri managed, guilt already rising in her throat. I know, because... Aryam paused dramatically. I got offered a position in New York, a year-long fellowship with a major consulting firm, all expenses paid, incredible connections, basically my dream job. Jiwon set down his knife with excessive care. New York? I know it's far, but Dad, this is huge. This could set up my entire career. Aryam grabbed Zuri's hands. And you have to promise to stay here. Please, Dad gets so lonely and he actually seems happier since you moved in. Don't you, Dad? Jaewon's eyes met Zuri's across the kitchen. Something passed between them. Desperate, broken. Congratulations, Arima, he said quietly. This is wonderful news. So we're celebrating. Dinner, all of us, like a real family. Aryam was already pulling out dishes. Zuri, you'll stay, right? At least until I get back. Dad needs someone around. He's terrible at taking care of himself. Zuri's throat closed. I don't know if that's appropriate. Why not? You're basically family now, right, Dad? Whatever Zuri is comfortable with, Juan said, not looking at either of them. The dinner was excruciating. Aram talked about New York, the apartment they'd provide, the projects she'd work on, how she'd visit for Chuseok. Every word was another brick in the wall separating what Zuri wanted from what was right. She watched Jaewon push food around his plate, saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hand trembled slightly when he reached for water. She'd done this to him. They'd done this to each other. I'm going to miss you both so much, Aryam said, eyes bright with wine and excitement. Promise you'll take care of each other? Zuri excused herself before she could scream. She went to the garden, the small stone path space between buildings where they'd somehow never been alone together. The night air was cool. Seoul's light pollution painted the sky orange. She heard footsteps behind her. You can't stay here. Jaewon's voice came from the darkness. Not with Aryam gone. I know. This is impossible. I know. Then why? His voice broke. Why am I standing here instead of letting you go? Zuri turned. He stood 3 meters away, far enough to be safe, close enough that she could see his face in the dim light. He looked wrecked. You're my best friend's father, she said, the words spilling out. This is forbidden. This is wrong. I owe her everything, and I'm betraying her just by standing here with you. I know. He stepped closer. That is why I fight it every day, why I wake up hating myself. Then stop. We both stop. I'll find another place. We'll forget. I can't. The confession tore out of him. I cannot stop thinking about you. I've tried. God, I've tried, but I cannot stop, and I am so deeply ashamed. Zuri's breath caught. J1, you're 24. You have your whole life ahead. I'm nearly 50, and I've spent half my life atoning for sins I can never wash clean. I have nothing to offer you but guilt and complication. Neither can I, she whispered. Stop thinking about you. I'm destroying my studies, my friendship, everything I came here for. It's destroying me. They stared at each other across the garden path. Then they were moving. Zuri didn't know who stepped first. Maybe both of them, pulled by something stronger than intention. The distance between them collapsed. 3 meters, 2, 1. They stopped with inches between them. Close enough that Zuri could feel the heat of his body, could see the rise and fall of his chest, could smell cedar and something else, something uniquely him. His hand lifted, stopped just before touching her face. Trembling. Please, she breathed. Didn't know if she was begging him to stop or continue. His eyes dropped to her mouth. She saw him break, saw the exact moment discipline fractured. He leaned in, she lifted her face. Their breath mingled. Jaewon jerked back like he'd been struck, stumbled backward 2 steps. No, his voice was hoarse. I will not dishonor my daughter. I will not dishonor you. Jaewon, you should leave. Tonight, I'll help you find another place. I'll pay for it. Whatever you need. He was retreating toward the house. This cannot happen. It will not happen. Don't you understand? Zuri's voice cracked. It already has. It's already too late. He stopped. Turned back. The look on his face was pure anguish. Then we live with it, he said. We live with wanting something we can never have, because the alternative is destroying everyone we love. He walked away. Zuri stood in the garden, shaking, tears streaming down her face. She didn't see the figure in the upstairs window. Didn't see Aryum, frozen behind glass, hand pressed to her mouth. Didn't see her best friend's face crumple as she watched the truth unfold beneath her. Didn't see her turn away, stricken, vanishing into shadow, but the damage was done. The secret was no longer secret, and everything was about to shatter. The next morning, Aryum didn't come down for breakfast. Zuri waited at the table, stomach churning. Jaewon appeared briefly, looked at Aryum's empty chair, then at Zuri. She knows, Zuri whispered. We don't know that. But they did. They both did. Aryum emerged around noon, face blank, eyes red. She moved through the house like a ghost, speaking to neither of them. When Zuri tried to approach, Aryum held up a hand. Don't. One word. Enough to stop Zuri's heart. The silence that followed was worse than screaming. 3 days crawled by. Aryum stopped eating meals with them, stopped answering texts. Her door stayed closed. When Zuri knocked, there was no response. When Jaewon knocked, Aryum's voice came through, flat and cold. Go away. Zuri packed her bags on the 3rd night. 2 suitcases, just like when she'd arrived. Everything she owned ready to disappear. She destroyed the only family she had left. Jaewon found her in the guest house surrounded by packed luggage. Where will you go? Student housing. A friend's couch. It doesn't matter. She couldn't look at him. This was my fault. I should have left the first night. I should have never. It wasn't your fault. Then whose was it? She finally met his eyes. We both knew this was wrong. We both knew what it would cost. And we did it anyway. He had no answer, just stood there, looking older than she'd ever seen him. Defeated. I'm leaving tonight, Zuri said. Tell Aryum, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her she was the best friend I ever had. He nodded once, left without another word. Dinner that night was the first time Aryum had joined them in 3 days. She sat at the table, back rigid, and finally looked at them both. Her eyes were dry now, cried out. How long? She asked. Silence. How long have you been lying to me? We haven't, Zuri started. Don't. Aryum's voice was sharp. I saw you, in the garden. I heard everything. Jaewon closed his eyes. Aryuma, how could you? Her voice broke. Both of you. I trusted you. I brought her here, Dad. I thought I was helping you both, making a family again. Nothing happened, Zuri said desperately. We never. You wanted to. I saw it. That's almost worse. Watching you both want something you couldn't have and knowing it was me. I'm the reason. Tears spilled over. Do you know how that feels? I'm leaving tonight, Zuri said. I'm so sorry. I never meant. You should have left months ago, Aryum said flatly. You should have left the first moment you felt something. The words landed like blows. Zuri stood. You're right. You're absolutely right. Jaewon remained seated, silent, accepting his punishment. His face was blank, but his hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Dad? Aryam turned to him. Nothing to say? I'm sorry. His voice was barely audible. I'm so sorry, Aryama. For what? For falling for her? Or for me catching you? He flinched. For hurting you. For being weak. For failing as a father. Aryam laughed, bitter, broken. You didn't fail as a father. You've been perfect. Too perfect. You've spent 24 years being disciplined and controlled and alone because you thought that's what I needed. She wiped her eyes roughly. I always knew you were lonely, Dad. I knew, and I pretended not to see because it was easier. Because if you were lonely, you were still mine. Just mine. Her voice cracked. But watching you want her, seeing you actually want something for yourself, made me realize I've kept you trapped. In grief. In duty. In the past. Jaewon's face crumpled. No. But I'm not ready to forgive you. Either of you. Aryam stood. I'm leaving for New York next week, and I don't want to see you before I go. She left the room. Zuri grabbed her bags. Jaewon didn't try to stop her. 6 weeks passed like bleeding. Aryam moved to New York without saying goodbye. Sent a single text to Zuri. I need time. Zuri moved into a tiny apartment shared with 2 other students. Slept on a borrowed mattress. Failed 2 exams. Stopped eating regularly. Her advisor suggested medical leave. I'm fine, Zuri insisted. She wasn't fine. Every night she thought about texting him. Every morning she stopped herself. Jaewon, unknown to her, was dissolving. He stopped going to work. Stopped sleeping. Old contacts from his past life called, concerned. He walked through neighborhoods he hadn't visited in decades, dark places where his old reputation still meant something. He stood on bridges at 3 a.m., looking at water, thinking about regret. He'd given up everything for Aryam once before, could do it again, would do it again. But God, it hurt. On day 43, Zuri sat in her cramped apartment and wrote a letter she'd never send. Dear Jaewon, I'm leaving Korea at the end of the semester. Going back to Lagos, or maybe somewhere else. Anywhere that doesn't smell like rain on stone paths. I want to tell you it was worth it. Meeting you, wanting you, almost having you. But that would be a lie. It cost me my best friend. It cost you your daughter's trust. It cost us both everything. What I can say is this. In another life, in another world where you weren't her father and I wasn't her friend, I would have loved you completely. I would have given you everything. But this is the only world we have. And in this world, we're impossible. I hope you find happiness. I hope you sleep again. I hope Aryam forgives you because you deserve forgiveness more than anyone I've ever known. I'll think of you forever. She folded the letter, put it in a book she'd borrowed from Aryam months ago, a book she'd return someday, maybe, when enough time had passed. Outside, Seoul continued without them. And somewhere across the city, Jaewon sat in his empty house and wondered if a man could die from wanting something he'd never touch again. 3 months into her New York fellowship, Aryam was unpacking books in her tiny Manhattan apartment when a folded paper slipped from the pages of a Korean poetry collection. She recognized Zuri's handwriting immediately. Dear Jaewon, Aryam's hands trembled as she read. Once, then again, then a third time, tears blurring the words. I would have loved you completely, but this is the only world we have. You deserve forgiveness more than anyone I've ever known. The letter wasn't a confession of betrayal. It was an elegy. A goodbye written by someone who'd chosen friendship over love, duty over desire. Someone who'd walked away from everything she wanted because staying would have hurt the person she loved most. Aryam had spent 3 months nursing her anger, feeding it like a flame. But reading her father's pain through Zuri's words, seeing how they'd both suffered, how neither had chosen this, how they'd fought it until they couldn't anymore, something shifted. She thought of her father raising her alone. 24 years of putting her first, of never dating seriously, never remarrying, never allowing himself to want anything that might threaten her happiness. She'd kept him trapped, not maliciously, but trapped nonetheless. And Zuri, who'd lost everything and asked for nothing. Who'd loved Aryam like a sister and walked away when that love conflicted with something else. They didn't betray me, Aryam realized. They chose me, even when it destroyed them. She booked a flight that night. Seoul in December was bitter cold. Aryam took a taxi directly to Bukchon, her childhood home. She hadn't warned her father she was coming. The house looked smaller, darker. Like it had aged years and months. She found him in the garden where she'd watched them almost kiss. He was sitting on the stone bench, wearing a coat too thin for the weather, staring at nothing. Dad? He turned. Shock registered, then something like fear. Aroma. He stood quickly. I didn't know you were coming. She walked closer, studied him. He'd lost weight, his coat hung loose on his frame, gray had spread through his hair like frost. His eyes were hollow. You look terrible, she said. I'm fine. You're not fine. You look like you're dying. He flinched, didn't deny it. They stood in the cold garden, breath misting between them. I read Zuri's letter, Ariam said finally. The one she wrote but never sent. His face went completely still. What letter? Telling you goodbye. Telling you she loved you but choosing to leave anyway. Telling you that you deserved happiness. Jaewon's eyes closed. Pain rippled across his features. I was so angry, Ariam continued, voice shaking. So hurt. But reading that letter, Dad, she chose me. You both chose me. Even when it cost you everything. Of course we did. His voice was rough. You're my daughter. You're her best friend. There was no other choice. But there should have been. Ariam wiped her eyes. You've spent my entire life sacrificing for me. You left your old life. You never remarried. You put every single thing you wanted aside because you thought that's what I needed. It is what you needed. Maybe when I was 5. But I'm 24 now, Dad. I'm not a child. She stepped closer. And I've been selfish. I knew you were lonely. I saw it every day and I pretended not to because it was easier. Because if you were lonely, you were still just mine. Aram, I'm not ready to give you my blessing. The words came out painful but honest. I don't know if I'll ever be completely comfortable with this. It's weird and complicated and it hurts. Jiwon nodded, accepting the verdict. But I also can't watch you die of loneliness, Ariam finished. And I can't watch Zuri destroy herself with guilt. So I'm going to try. I'm going to try to accept this. His eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying go to her. If you love her, really love her, not some fantasy, then you have to fight for her. Because she won't fight for herself. She'll sacrifice everything for me, just like you always have. She won't want to see me. Are you sure, or are you just afraid? Jaewon had no answer. An hour later, Ariam stood outside Zuri's apartment building. The neighborhood was rough, nothing like Bukchon's quiet elegance. She climbed 4 flights of stairs to a door with peeling paint. Knocked. Zuri answered in sweatpants and an oversized shirt, hair unwashed, eyes widening in shock. Ariam? I read your letter. Zuri went pale. Stepped back like she'd been hit. Can I come in? They sat on Zuri's borrowed mattress in the tiny room she shared with 2 other students. Neither spoke for a long moment. I'm sorry, Zuri finally whispered. I'm so sorry. I know. I tried to stop it. I tried so hard. I know. Ariam's voice cracked. I read the letter, Zuri. I saw. Tears streamed down Zuri's face. I never wanted to hurt you. You're the only family I have. I know that too. Ariam reached out, took her hand. And I'm sorry for making you choose, for being so angry I couldn't see how much you were both suffering. They cried together. Ugly, painful tears. 3 months of grief pouring out. I don't know if I can give you my blessing, Ariam said finally. This is still hard for me, still weird, but I know I can't watch him die, and I can't watch you destroy yourself either. Zuri shook her head. It's too late, I left. He probably hates me. He doesn't hate you. He's killing himself slowly because he can't have you. Ariam, if you love him, really love him, not some romantic fantasy, then you have to fight for him, because he won't fight for himself. He'll just accept punishment forever. What if he doesn't want me anymore? Zuri's voice was small. What if too much time has passed? Then at least you'll know, at least you tried. Aram squeezed her hand. And if he does want you, if you both get this second chance, don't waste it. Don't let guilt poison it. Just be happy. Please, someone in this family should be happy. Zuri stared at her. You're serious. I'm terrified, but yes. I don't deserve you. Probably not. Ariam smiled through tears. But you're stuck with me anyway. That evening, Zuri stood outside the house in Bukchon, snow beginning to fall. Her heart hammered, her hands shook. She'd spent 3 months running, 3 months choosing duty over desire. But maybe, just maybe, she could choose both. Maybe love didn't have to destroy everything. Maybe it could heal instead. She walked up the stone path and knocked on the door. Jaewon opened the door and froze. Zuri stood in the falling snow, wearing the same cardigan she'd worn the first night, hair dusted white, eyes red from crying or cold or both. She looked like a ghost, like a dream, like everything he tried to stop wanting. You shouldn't be here, he said, but his voice had no strength behind it. I know. She didn't move. I shouldn't love you either, but I do. His hand tightened on the doorframe. Zuri, I love you. I've loved you since the first night, maybe. Definitely since the garden, and I'm tired of pretending I don't. Aram. Aram sent me here. The words hit him like a physical blow. He stumbled back a step. What? She found my letter. She came to my apartment. She told me. Zuri's voice shook. She told me to fight for you. Jaewon couldn't speak, couldn't process. 3 months of carefully maintained control began to fracture. She said you were dying, Zuri continued, flat, that you looked like a ghost, that someone in this family should be happy. She said that? She's not giving us her blessing. Not completely. She's still hurt, still processing, but she's trying. She's giving us permission to try. Jaewon's walls, built over decades, reinforced through discipline and guilt, cracked, then crumbled. He made a sound that was half sob, half breath, turned away so she wouldn't see him break. But Zuri stepped inside, closed the door behind her, reached for him. Don't, he choked out. If you touch me, I won't be able to. She touched him anyway, took his hands in hers. They were freezing, trembling. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your daughter, she said softly. I'm asking you to let yourself be loved, to stop punishing yourself, to believe you deserve something good. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, but I'm here anyway. He finally looked at her, really looked, and what she saw in his face made her heart stop. Years of loneliness, restraint, guilt, and underneath it all, desperate, aching want. I have never stopped thinking about you, he confessed, voice breaking. Not for one day, not for 1 hour. I tried. I tried so hard, but I cannot stop. Then don't. I'm broken, Zuri. I'm older. I've done terrible things in my past. I have nothing to offer you but complications, and you have yourself. That's everything. He shook his head. I will spend every day earning your trust, your happiness, your love, if you let me, if you'll have me despite everything. She kissed him, rose on her toes and pressed her mouth to his, cutting off words, doubts, all the reasons they shouldn't. For a heartbeat, he was still, shocked. Then he kissed her back, slow, reverent, like she was something holy he'd been forbidden to touch. His hands came up to cup her face with devastating gentleness. Years of restraint dissolved into something raw and honest and real. They broke apart, breathing hard. Upstairs, Zuri whispered. His bedroom was simple, minimal furniture, neat, controlled. Like everything about him, except now control was gone. They came together like people drowning, hands trembling as they undressed each other with careful urgency. Not rushed, not purely physical. This was claiming, recognition, two people who'd fought wanting each other finally surrendering. Are you sure? Jaewon asked, even as his hands traced her shoulders, her spine, every touch worshipful. I've never been more sure of anything. He laid her down like she was fragile, kissed her slowly, mouth, throat, collarbones, learning her, memorizing her. When he finally moved inside her, Zuri gasped, not from pain, but from the overwhelming rightness of it, of being filled, completed, chosen. He moved with the same careful attention he brought to everything, watching her face, adjusting to her responses. His control was slipping, though. She could see it in his eyes, feel it in the tension of his body. Let go, she whispered. I want all of you. He buried his face in her neck and broke. Moved faster, harder, years of loneliness and restraint finally finding release. Zuri held him through it, tears streaming down her face, not from sadness, but from the sheer relief of being seen, wanted, loved without reservation. Afterward, they lay tangled together, his hand tracing patterns on her shoulder, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. I love you, he said into her hair. I should have said it first. I love you too. They stayed like that until morning light crept through the windows. Zuri's phone rang at 8 a.m. Aram's name flashed on the screen. Zuri's stomach dropped. Jaewon tensed beside her. She answered, Put it on video call. Aram's face appeared, puffy from crying but trying to smile. Morning, she said awkwardly. Morning, Zuri managed. Is Dad there? Jaewon moved into frame, pulling a shirt on. His hair was disheveled, face soft in ways Aram had never seen. There was a long, painful silence. Then Aram laughed, broken but real. You look alive again. Jaewon's eyes filled with tears. Aram, this is still weird, she said quickly. Like, really weird. And I'm going to need time. Therapy, probably. But, she wiped her eyes. You both look happy. Finally. So yeah. Thank you, Jaewon whispered. Thank you, my daughter. Just don't make me regret this, either of you. We won't, Zuri promised. They talked for a few more minutes. Awkward, honest, painful, but healing. When Aram hung up, Zuri and Jaewon sat in silence. This is real, Zuri said wonderingly. This is real, he confirmed. And for the first time in 3 months, they both breathed freely. 6 months later, Seoul had transformed from a foreign city into home. Zuri stood in the kitchen of the Bukchan house, their house now, preparing dinner. Her thesis defense had been last week. She'd passed with distinction. Her advisor had offered her a research position. She'd accepted. Korea wasn't temporary anymore. The door opened. Aryam's voice rang out, "I'm here, and I'm starving." She swept into the kitchen, dropped her bags, and hugged Zuri fiercely. 3 days home from New York for Chuseok. Still adjusting, still processing, but genuinely trying. "Dad," she called, "stop hiding in your study and come help." Jiwon emerged, smiling, an expression that came easily now. He'd gained back the weight he'd lost. The gray in his hair remained, but the hollowness in his eyes was gone. He moved differently, lighter, present. Dinner was chaotic and warm. Aram dominated conversation, telling stories about New York, complaining about her boss, teasing her father mercilessly about the way he looked at Zuri. "You're staring again," Aram pointed out. "It's embarrassing." "I'm allowed to look at her," Jaewon said mildly. "Not like that at the dinner table." Zuri laughed, catching his eye. He smiled back, private, tender. "You know," Aram said suddenly, serious now, "I always wanted a sister, just not like this." Zuri's breath caught. "Aram, but I'll take it." And the Aryam reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "Your family. Weird, complicated, sometimes uncomfortable family, but family." "I'll take it too," Zuri whispered. After dinner, Aryam retreated to her room for a video call with friends. Jaewon took Zuri's hand. "Walk with me?" They walked through Seoul's streets, hands intertwined, breath misting in the autumn air. The city glittered around them, neon signs, street vendors, lovers, and families moving through their own stories. "What are you thinking?" Jaewon asked. Zuri was quiet for a moment. "I came to Korea running from love, running from loss and pain and the risk of feeling anything that deeply again." He squeezed her hand. "I found it in the last place I should have looked," she continued. "In the most impossible, complicated, forbidden place, and it saved me." "You saved me," he said softly. "You gave me permission to want something again, to be human again." They stopped under a streetlight. Early snow had begun to fall, soft, silent, painting everything clean. Jaewon turned to face her, cupped her face in his hands. "I love you," he said. "Simple, true, no guilt anymore, no shame, just fact. I love you too." "What are you thinking now?" he asked. Zuri smiled. "That sometimes the wrong choice is the only right one." He kissed her as snow fell around them. Two people who'd fought wanting each other, who'd paid the price, who'd earned this moment through honesty and sacrifice and impossible courage. They stood under Seoul's lights, finally free, finally home, finally allowed to love without breaking. Behind them, the city continued. Ahead, their future waited. Uncertain, complicated, beautiful. Together. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about love that breaks all the rules. Drop a comment. Would you have fought for a forbidden love like Zuri did, or would you have walked away forever? I want to hear your thoughts. See you in the next story.